For this week, for pre-algebra, we'll be working on Pythagorean theorem. So a couple of vocab words that are important to know for this lesson. First one is a right triangle, which means the triangle, three sides, has exactly one angle that's 90 degrees. Now with math, if an angle isn't marked 90 degrees, either with this box, which means it's a right angle, or with 90 degrees as like the angle measure, you cannot assume that it's equal to 90 degrees, even if it looks like it's 90 degrees, because this angle here could be 89.9 degrees, which is not perpendicular, which is not 90 degrees, so you cannot assume that it is. The hypotenuse is always the longest side, which just also so happens to be this corner of the box points at the hypotenuse. So this is your hypotenuse, the longest side of the triangle, and then we've got leg 1, leg 2. The legs don't matter which one is which, so they could be switched there, flip-flopped, and it wouldn't matter. Hypotenuse does matter. It is always the longest side. So for Pythagorean theorem, what we have is this ability to use this formula, where we would have basically leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse. This is talking about the lengths of these sides, hypotenuse squared, more formally, and usually how you see it. One leg will be A, one leg will be B. Again, it doesn't matter, they can be flip-flopped. And then the hypotenuse is always going to be C. So you would have the length of A squared plus the length of B squared equals the length of C squared. So that is what you need to make sure you have in your notes. The angles here are often measured with uppercase. Sides are lowercase. Notice how sides are opposite their angles. Also notice that the biggest angle is opposite the biggest side, the smallest angle is opposite the smallest side. So again, Pythagorean theorem then is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we know that that equation has to be true. So we can check to see if a triangle is a right triangle or not, see if it by making that equation true. So we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. For each of your problems on your homework, you should be writing that out. So then we would have 6 squared plus 8 squared equals 10 squared. Again, it could be 8 squared plus 6 squared, does not matter. Simplify, we get 36 plus 64 equals 100. 100 equals 100. So yes, it's a right triangle. Sometimes I'll ask you to find a missing length or a missing side. So we know x is our hypotenuse here because it's opposite the right angle. So we'll have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So that means we'll have 5 squared plus 12 squared equals x squared, because x is our hypotenuse, which is the c value. So 25 plus 144 equals x squared. 169 equals x squared. So now at this point, doing a little bit of algebra. Last week we worked on solving for an unknown. Here x is our unknown. What we're going to do is, because there's an x squared here, the opposite of that is taking the square root. So we'll take the square root of both sides, which we learned a few lessons ago. That means this x squared cancels out with that square root. So you're left with an x, 169, the square root of that is 13. So x would be equal to 13. Now we'll have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now we check to see what our hypotenuse is, because that's the most important part, and our hypotenuse is 15. So we plug 15 in for c, which means we're left with 9 squared plus l squared. We have 81 plus l squared. We don't know what l is, but we're trying to find, equals 225. just like we did last week, we're going to subtract 81, trying to get L all by itself. So we get L squared equals 144. And then we take the square root of both sides, and we get L equals 12. Remember, this is solving an equation, so whatever you do on one side, you also have to do on the other side. Whatever you do on one side, you also have to do on the other side. All right. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We check to see what our hypotenuse is. It's 5. So we'll have 4 squared plus L squared equals 5 squared, 16. Simplifying what we can. Then we'll subtract 16 from both sides. We get L squared equals 9. Take the square root of both sides. L equals 3.